Expect we'll add some more people. All right, got it. So welcome to our September convening. It's really exciting to see you all. I've stopped saying, we keep thinking this will be our last Zoom convening because who knows, but this is a really exciting convening for us for a number of reasons. And most excitingly for at least the backbone team has been all the work that's happened on our vision and mission statement over the summer. And Jesse's going to kind of be unveiling that in a few moments. And then Danique will be in the race equity core team, and our consultants Jamal Jimerson walking us through some of the work that they've been doing over the past year. And then finally, Dr. Estrella and members of the cabinet and many new members of the cabinet, which is really exciting, will also be joining us to talk about the strategic operating plan and the good work happening in the district and some alignment between their work and Norwalk ACTS. So, and before we get started, I just want to acknowledge what a tough weekend this was for so many of us with the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I know MJ and I were very intimately involved in the recovery here, working with families, and she and I and many colleagues were texting support of one another, as I'm sure many of you were. But I think the overarching sentiment that I took away was just how united we were in the post 9/11 days, weeks, months afterwards. And I just hope it's a reminder to all of us to continue to try to do our part, given the divisiveness that is occurring and has seemed to have kind of permeated our country over the last few years. So I feel really fortunate that here in Norwalk, we have such a wonderful, tight-knit group that is working so cohesively. And that was even remarked by our Strive Together partners when they did our survey of how our partnership works in this spring. And they said, everyone just said, that's just how we work in Norwalk. It's collaborative. And so I think that's a real testament to all of you, all of us. And you're going to see more of that today. So I'm going to turn it over to Jesse. I did just notice Senator Bob Duff popped in, and I just want to acknowledge the good senator and thank him for his work and leadership in many areas over the past year. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jesse.
All right, good morning, everybody. Just going to wait for the slides to pop up, but this past summer has been a very busy summer for us, and we have been in strategic planning mode. So there have been 3 strategic planning priorities for us. The first was redesigning our mission and vision. And Anna-Melena, if we can go to the next slide. Great. The first was redesigning our mission and vision, and then clarifying kind of what do we mean by our cornerstones, which Jennifer is going to touch on a little bit. The second we're kind of still in motion with is restructuring our initiatives and building a tool called the Initiative Phase Meter, which we'll show, having a leadership restructure, and then a goal and outcome revision. And then the third, which will be ongoing over the next year, is revising kind of the roles and expectations for members, for our implementation team, and for our board of directors. You can go to the next slide. So we call this kind of the strategy train lines. It's there's a lot going on here, and I'll cover it briefly. And just note that this presentation will be sent to everyone afterwards, so you can take a deeper look. But if you look across this top, we have kind of our calendar going all the way to September 22. And we kind of boxed up different convenings as kind of key milestone dates. So we're here at our September convening. Each of our convenings are focused on one of our cornerstones, this one being social justice and equity. In December, our convening will be focused on policy and advocacy. In March, our convening will be focused on data. In June, our convening will be focused on community engagement. And then we're already here at next September. In May, we'll have this annual partnership survey, which has kind of been our new way to kind of evaluate how are we doing as a collective impact organization. So the next 4 rows under the months represent our cornerstones. And it's just to show that there's ongoing work from the backbone team, as well as from our members and our leadership team in these different areas. So in terms of data, there's implementation across the different dashboards that we annually work on. In social justice and equity, Danique is going to share more about this, but there's an action plan development and implementation of that. For community engagement, there's a lot of new projects working with the community advocate program, youth town halls, early childhood education outreach, and the Norwalk Housing Authority Resident Advisory Council recruitment. We'll share more. We have an upcoming youth town hall in September and a Board of Education forum in October. And then for policy and advocacy, we're currently in strategic planning mode around that with a policy and advocacy task force. And our goal is to have that in implementation by December as the legislative session starts next year. And then for the backbone team, like I said previously with those strategic planning activities, we are currently exploring kind of what does it mean to be on the implementation team and what does it mean to be a board of director for Norwalk ACTS. We're also updating an evergreen. An evergreen is a short kind of 3 to 4 page document that it really explains our work in a clear way. And we'll be planning to release that evergreen in December. Over the summer, it's going to kind of go back to planning mode. We'll be developing an impact report this summer that will be released in September, and then really kind of nailing down the role of a member of Norwalk ACTS and revising our MOA, our Memorandum of Agreement, and we'll have that re-signing of the MOA for next September. And lastly, we are revising our initiative goals and outcomes over the next 2 months, and then hope to have our initiatives in kind of a regular meeting cadence using this phase meter as a continuous improvement tool. So this is just a high level description of one of the things that we did over the summer. It shows different gateways along the top from forming, exploring, all the way to transformation. And then we have different kind of content and criteria that represent our cornerstones, from equitable process to data to community engagement and to policy and advocacy. And the idea is to kind of evaluate where are each of our initiatives on this phase meter and what needs to be done to bring it to the next level and to the next gateway. And it shows kind of different pieces of what that work looks like from a backbone team versus leadership versus membership. And we'll share a little bit later on, I'll share the PDF version that has a lot more detail and content in the chat, so you can take a look at that. But this is just a high level kind of visual of what this looks like. So one of the biggest things we've been doing this summer is the redesign of our vision and mission. And we've been having a lot of different inputs to make sure that this process is transparent and equitable and collective. And so we've had input from the implementation team, from us as a Norwalk ACTS backbone staff, from you as members, from our community advocates, from the board of directors, and from Strive Together, our national partner. So we've had a lot of inputs from the June convening. We spent about an hour in breakout groups, generating word clouds and discussing what do we want to be in our new mission and vision. We've had evaluations and retreats. We've had different teams such as the equity core team review this. And then we put out a pulse check survey the midsummer to gather more feedback on our draft version of this. So we're super excited. We know it was a big process to develop these new statements, but this kind of sets our new charge for years to come. So our old vision was Norwalk will be the healthiest city in America for a child to grow academically, social, emotionally, and physically. And our new vision is that Norwalk is a connected and equitable community where every child and young person thrives academically, physically, and social emotionally from cradle to career. Our old mission was to enrich and improve the lives and futures of all of Norwalk's children and youth, cradle to career. And our new mission is to collectively transform systems by ensuring that resources, policies, practices, and power structures actively dismantle racism and drive equitable outcomes for every Norwalk child and young person. So a couple acknowledgements about the new mission and vision statement. We had a constant tension of being kind of vague, simple, short versus specific, wordy, and jargony. We, within this work, we also have our cornerstones and statements that describe what each cornerstone is. And that is an opportunity to dive a lot deeper about what do we mean around policy and advocacy, or what do we mean around community engagement or social justice and equity. The second acknowledgement is that this is collective impact work is very complex work to describe. And we have this revolving question of who is our audience. And the fact is that everyone is our audience. And so it's hard to kind of find the right level of language to pick for that. I also want to note that the mission and vision should always be paired together. Our mission is a process and our work to accomplish our vision and what we hope to see. And lastly, and kind of the most important next step for us is developing this evergreen that I mentioned. And then in that evergreen is going to be a glossary of terms, specifically terms from this mission and vision statement about what do we mean when we say power structures, or what do we mean when we say resources, a clarification of our cornerstones, and then a revised kind of short description of our initiatives. So that'll be worked on in the next few months, and we'll be releasing that for December. So I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer now to chat more about our cornerstones.
Thanks, Jesse, and kudos to him for really shepherding us all through this process over the last few months. A lot of you have asked questions kind of about our cornerstones, and just as a reminder, this was really cemented for us last fall, and this is much more fleshed out, if you remember, in our impact report that we released last December. So if you're unclear or want some more detail, please reference that report, and we are going to take elements of that into this evergreen document that Jesse just described. And we'll recirculate that report when we send out convening materials as well. And we know the work of Norwalk ACTS has been to describe it has been a long-standing challenge, and we're hoping that this document will finally provide some clarity and get us all kind of singing from the same songbook and talking with the same kind of clarity. So just wanted to spend 5 minutes reviewing what we mean by these cornerstones. And the way I've been describing it is kind of the ingredients or the food groups, if you think of that, for whatever work we do, be it early childhood, social emotional wellness, college and workforce readiness. These are the kind of key 4 elements that are really necessary in the bedrock of the work to move the needle on population level change. So data, you all know, our dynamic duo of Ray and Paula have been at this work for a very long time, and we must continue to be guided by data, both quantitative, which we do really well, and qualitative, which we haven't done as well, which ties really very much into our community engagement piece. But collecting and analyzing, disaggregating data is really key to understanding what is working and for whom. And it's just a key element, and really being able to examine how we're going to reach our end game. And just a reminder that our data dashboards, the terrific dashboards Paula and Ray have put together, are available on our website. Please use those. They can be helpful for grant reporting, all sorts of things. Our social justice and equity work, which you'll hear a lot more about, and shout out to Danique, who's really kind of was thrown into this last fall and has just done an amazing job helping guide the race equity core team. And you know, it's because the data that continues to show gaps in achievement and opportunities for low-income children and children of color that we must continue to examine the structures that perpetuate these gaps. And I think you see that reflected in our updated mission and vision statements. So this is both an internal examination of kind of the roles each of us play in our organizations and potentially perpetuating gaps, as well as externally in how we can come together to make those population level changes. We know that this issue is hundreds of years in the making and is not a quick fix. It's a difficult, long process, and you'll hear more about this in a few minutes. And then our other dynamic duo of Ana Milena Moreno and MJ Corona, who have been doing a great job in community engagement over the past year. You'll remember that we staffed up in this area to really do some more grassroots organizing. We've been great about convening all of us and nonprofits and leadership in the community, but we also really simultaneously must engage individual residents themselves. And so that stems from the belief that those who are closest to to the issues are also closest to the solutions. And you heard a lot more about this in our June convening. If you want to learn more and weren't there, you can go back to that recording. But the Community Advocate Program, which MJ and Annalena developed, and it's really exciting. I know there are some of our community advocates on this call right now. And then finally, policy and advocacy. And again, this you've heard me, for those who have heard me in the last 2.5 years, probably ad nauseum, talk about, the river analogy and pulling people out versus going upstream. And we can't program our way out of some of the challenges that we face. And that's just the reality. Systematic change requires us to be going to the macro level and looking at policy and advocacy work. So we must serve and advocate. We have some of our staff doing a book club on Forces for Good, which is a great book that really talks about the need to do both, and we recommend that. And this also ties directly into community engagement work and coordinating efforts with leadership in key areas. So we're engaging individual community members as well as kind of leadership in civic engagement, and you'll also hear a little bit more about that. And Jesse mentioned the Board of Education Candidate Forum is a perfect example. We're proud to be partnering with Center for Youth Leadership to host a Board of Education Candidate Forum in October. And that date and link are at the bottom of the slides when we conclude. Just another quick reminder that we still have an open policy director position. This is the cradle to career, the 4 communities strive together communities in Norwalk, and it is going to be housed and embedded within Norwalk ACTS, and that is still an open position we are seeking candidates for. So all of these cornerstones have explicit work or kind of task forces groups that have been fleshing out what this really looks like in practice. And this morning we have an overview of the work that's happening from the Race Equity Core Team. So I'm happy to kind of turn our attention over to that and introduce you to Jamal Jimerson with Thought Partners Solutions. For those who may recall, we had an open invitation last early fall, to really engage all of you with Thought Partners in creating this Race Equity Core Team to really examine what this looks like for Norwalk ACTS. And he may be familiar to some of you who participated in 1 or more of our 10 workshops that we provided through Thought Partners Solutions over the past year. You'll hear many times throughout this presentation, I'm sure, that this is all in formation stage, and we are eager, the core team is eager to re-engage the larger Norwalk ACTS community in shaping what this plan looks like for the coming years. So I don't see Jamal, but my screen has about 4 people on it, so I'm assuming he's on, and I'm really just in a really authentic partnership over the past year. So I would like to turn it over to you to give a little bit of an interview and then kick it to overview, I'm sorry, and then kick it to Denise.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate it. And good morning, everyone. Good to see everyone's faces. Jennifer, I'm fortunate enough, I have a super large screen so I can see the whole room, the gallery view right now. But it's good to see everyone. Good morning. And thank you, Diana, for sharing that interview as well. But I'm happy to be here this morning, happy to have an opportunity to kind of introduce a little bit of the work that we've done with Norwalk ACTS over the last year. It's been a interesting start to a beautiful journey. I truly believe that this is journey work. We have to really be committed to sort of a long-term agenda, and much of what we center our work in at Thought Partners is really in the process. And so the process of being able to get people to do what we call REACT, which is when it comes to racial equity, being able to acknowledge or develop awareness of some of the deeper issues, to make a sincere commitment to address the things that we are learning and engaging in systemically, structurally, institutionally, and frankly, then doing meaningful actions that are going to ultimately transform individuals as well as systems. And so we think of that as what we call REACT. And so with the process that we took with Norwalk ACTS, it was centered in that. We began the work last September. And as Jennifer mentioned, I had opportunities to speak with some of you who are here on the call, as well as members of the staff, people from the community who really gave us some perspective and insight, because the goal initially is to try to learn as much as we can from people who are deeply invested in the organization, so we can learn as much as we can about what some of those challenges are pertaining to racial equity, inclusion, belonging, and those kind of things. And so the assessment that we did was really centered in that. And we looked at everything from the internal culture of Norwalk ACTS, the internal leadership, the policies and practices of the organization, to the membership and the way that the organization has led and positioned membership to be able to drive the racial equity agenda forward. We did a number of community-based workshops. So we did a number of teaching sessions with folks, just kind of going through different information, answering questions, trying to address some of those challenging areas. But as we were doing those, we also gained an opportunity to do some assessment in that, which was wonderful. We did a lot of review of documents, and we did surveys, and just spoke to a lot of people. And again, a lot to kind of gather information and do some acknowledgement. And what we did with those acknowledgements was we used that as sort of the base for leaning in and learning more about, what are the things that Norwalk ACTS is doing well. What are the potential barriers that will erode or challenge your ability to be able to advance a racial equity culture? And what commitments do you need to make in order to make long-term transformative solutions? And so that's pretty much where we centered ourselves. And all of this led to the development of a report in connection with the racial equity steering team, the formation of this steering team, as well as just providing the steering team with these recommendations that were then used to take or develop some outcomes and some key steps, small adaptive changes that again would lead to more long-term transformation. So this has been a good process so far, and to see where we've started from and to where we've come has been quite a journey. And again, shouts to Danique, because she's done a really good job, particularly in the last year, trying to really take all of this information and bring it together and drive it forward. And Jennifer for, again, exhibiting a very high level of leadership in all of this. So the report, Mike, is available. Thank you for asking that question. That report is available. I'm sure that Danique and others will circulate that to members of the organization, as well as folks in the membership community. So that report is available. And it highlights all of this, but also today, one of the benefits is that the racial equity steering team is going to take you through the findings. And so you'll have an opportunity to hear about that during today's presentation. So this is very much a process that we remain as sort of like humble partners in. We like to exhibit a high level of humility in the process. In other words, we really centered on you. We want you to learn from each other. We hope that this will spark some difficult conversations and elevate some hard truths, but we also want those hard truths to lead to meaningful action and substantive change long term. So that's what we hope that you'll gain from this process. As you hear about some of the acknowledgements, the barriers and the commitments, know that this is not meant to be a list that's going to have everything, right? There's going to be always some things that can be added in. And I think the beauty of it is the invitation in this for folks to give feedback and to continue to lean in and offer perspective and insight. So there's a lot here, but we try to, in our delivery, try to simplify things as much as possible so it's easy to process and understand. So at this point, that's pretty much a long, sort of a high view, if you will, of the process and what we've been through over the last year. And we look forward to hearing your thoughts and questions and reflections during the presentation from the Racial Equity Steering Team about what's been discovered in this process, and also about what is expected of the organization as you move forward. So excited to be here and looking forward to continuing to do this great work with you. And at this point, I'll pass it back over. I don't know if it's Danique or someone from the Racial Equity Steering Team who's going to take it from here to lead through the findings from the report.
Thanks, Jamal. It's been wonderful really being able to work and partner with you over this past year. Ana Melina, can you please move to the next slide? Thank you. So before other members of our core team really take you through some of our long-term outcomes, I just wanted to make some acknowledgements and really take a minute to really thank again the racial equity core team, really specifically Namie and Betsy, who have really co-chaired this work over this past year, and really just want to ensure that all of you recognize and see that as far as members are concerned, they both really were intentional with ensuring that there were multiple facets of the Norwalk ACTS ecosystem that were really comprised of membership on this team, and have been really committed and dedicated to support this work over this past year. We also want to acknowledge that there are more people from our community that we need to reach out to and include. Many more brave conversations to be had, and that will lead us to the prioritization of goals and metrics for implementation over the next 3 years. So as you've heard Jamal already talk about, and many of us will continue to say, that this work is a journey and a continued work in progress. So we're using this this morning to really provide you all with an update on what we've been up to this past year, and also to express our continued commitment to racial equity in Norwalk. So with that, I will pass this over to Betsy, who will walk us through our draft racial equity statement.
I'm sorry, Betsy.
Sorry, you couldn't hear me. Can you hear me now? Sorry. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Danique and Jamal. Good morning, everyone. So I'm just going to take a moment to talk through and provide a little more context around the race equity statement briefly. And then we're also going to provide a link to a brief survey in the chat where you'll have a couple moments right here and now to provide your thoughts and reactions and reflections and feedback, just initial thoughts, because as we've been saying, this is a draft, and as the statement itself says, this statement will evolve as the work evolves, right? As we all listen and learn and grow and change within this work together. So hearing from all of you, your honest and open and vulnerable thoughts and reactions is a key part of the process. It's part of the work and it's critically important. So we're gonna provide a couple minutes right after I go through the statement to just get even those initial thoughts. So the race equity statement is a key part of the process and the REACT process that Jamal talked about and that he's coaching us through. So prior to digging into the outcomes and start fleshing out a potential action plan, Jamal really coached us on the importance of getting clarity on where we are now as an organization in this work and reflect that in a statement. And he also coached us through in terms of how to develop this statement is to hone in on our shared values, problems, solutions, and actions, and incorporate those components into this statement. Just a side note, to be super transparent, we were just talking about this at our meeting last week and just sort of reflecting a little bit on the process and thinking back to sort of when we were getting this going with the core team and whatnot. And there we had a lot of tension that we grappled with because we kept saying, well, what is our vision? What are our goals? Why are we here? What are we doing? And it kept coming up in various different ways. And we really actually couldn't answer it. And I think what we were talking about last week is we didn't realize it then, but we're seeing it more clearly now after all the work of the past year that we weren't ready. We weren't ready to create that statement we didn't have that clarity yet. And so now after all of this, the work of the past year, we had more to work with to create this race equity statement. But I say that too, to again reiterate, this is literally a living and breathing statement. These are not just words. This is to guide and inspire our action going forward. So the Norwalk ACTS Race Equity Statement, I'm going to read it through. I'm going to highlight just a couple areas because the team was really intentional about key pieces of this that really came out of the findings in the report. that they believe is critical to where we are now as an organization and where we want to go. So the need for racial equity in Norwalk is critical and non-negotiable. It is important and central to the work of Norwalk ACTS. Since its inception, the lack of racial equity has and continues to drive our work. Non-negotiable is a really important piece because since its inception, literally the existence of Norwalk ACTS is because of the lack of racial equity. So this work is non-negotiable. It absolutely will be continuing to drive the work forward. Norwalk ACTS is dedicated to identifying and breaking down barriers, changing and rebuilding systems, and improving outcomes for all of Norwalk's children and families in order to live healthy, fulfilling lives that are also free of racism and oppression. And here is where we are highlighting two key areas, guiding actions that really came out pretty strongly over the past year, the work of the past year. As such, one, we recognize the need to center the lived experiences of the BIPOC community. And for two, Norwalk residents to lead and guide all work moving forward. We also recognize intersectionality is crucial to equity work. The different identities we hold overlap and affect how we experience discrimination. Examples are race, ethnicity, class, gender identity, and sexual orientation. This work requires a commitment to developing anti-racist policies, practices, and behaviors within ourselves to empower those within the community. We are committed to transforming the way we work with equity woven into the fabric of Norwalk ACTS. This is a really important sentence to us. Transforming the way we work, going back to what Jamal talked about, the REACT process. This is not just about dismantling racism and oppression that shows up within ourselves and within our organization and the systems, but it's also about putting something new in its place. We're committed to re-envisioning how we can be, how we can show up for each other and for Norwalk's children and families. And we do that by weaving equity into the fabric, into literally everything, who we are and how we operate. And we also value that the change externally starts with the change inside. Of every endeavor, we need to ask, will this move racial equity forward and ensure that our commitment to equity is consistently reinforced by our collective action? This is also a key piece that came up over and over and over again over the past year from multiple voices. Our commitment is very clear. It's very clear, it's there, there's no question about that. And now it's time to ensure that that commitment is translated into consistent action every single day in order to improve outcomes for historically marginalized, disenfranchised, and oppressed peoples in Norwalk. This is a continuous learning journey, as we all know, we continue to talk about. The core team has talked a lot about that this is not a sit back and hang out kind of a journey. This is a sit forward. This is a stand up. This is a find your voice. This is a get messy together kind of journey, which requires humility, vulnerability, the willingness to adapt, and certainly the willingness to embrace failure. Our work and our equity statement will evolve as we progress and learn new perspectives and information on this journey towards anti-racist action. So now, Anna Melina, if you could put the link, or Denise, there we go, wonderful. So now, as we said before, this is a draft, this is evolving. Your thoughts, reactions, input are really critical. This is not the only chance for this. This is just an initial. Sometimes it's really great to get that initial reaction. So please take a moment to click on the link in the chat and provide your feedback. We'll give you just a couple more minutes. And also that this is not, again, your only chance. We will keep this open until the end of the month as well, the survey link.
Anna Milena, could you put the statement back up? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Really appreciate taking that moment to provide your feedback. Now I'm going to toss this over to Naomi to move us forward.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Betsy, and thank you all that have provided your feedback. Also, thank you to Jamal and Danique for teeing this all up for us. So as Betsy, and I think as everyone on this board team has been mentioning, this is a process and a journey. So these are the 4 long-term race equity outcomes that came out of the work that we have been doing over the past year. And we're going to go through each outcome in a little bit more detail. The amount of information that came out of each outcome was way more expansive than we could share today. So I know somebody had asked earlier whether or not those reports will be available. That will have a deeper dive into this. Today, we wanted to just give you a high-level overview. So the 4 outcomes that came out, outcome 1, Norwalk ACTS organizational leadership will demonstrate a commitment to aligning the organization's race equity values with its governance and operational practices. And one of the things we did as a race equity steering team is we had a conversation with the Norwalk ACTS board, a beginning conversation around this particular outcome. Outcome 2, Norwalk ACTS will demonstrate equity in its human resources with the goal of recruiting and retaining a backbone team that is both diverse and reflective of the city and public schools. Outcome 3, Norwalk ACTS will expand the BIPOC community representation and its engagement and membership. And outcome 4, Norwalk ACTS will convene and support member organizations to advance racial equity. Annalena, if you can move forward. So I wanted to spend some time today to talk about race equity outcome 1. So again, that's the organizational leadership demonstrating a commitment to aligning race equity values. Some examples of recommendations that we received from that report are 1, thinking about hiring a director of race equity to serve as the principal leader. Part of this conversation came up because we were saying, stretching one person. Danique has been amazing and great working with us the last year, but we recognize that this is one piece of the work that Danique has. So thinking about how do we expand that role? How do we ensure all the things that we have talked about in that draft race equity statement of ensuring that the work gets done? So looking at hiring a race equity director to have an internal expertise and experience in advancing the equity work. Mandating annual participation in racial equity workshops for the board, the implementation team, the CEO, and backbone staff. And that helps to ensure that there's a shared understanding of race equity terminology, shared values, operational skills. And then the third recommendation is ensuring that the race equity core team or the larger race equity social justice task force is adequately resourced to provide support, skills development, and monitoring of the race equity implementation. And again, this is just a piece of the recommendations, you'll see in the reports that there is a lot more. So I'm going to hand it off to the next person who's going to go through outcome 2.
All right, so outcome 2 is really around equity in the workplace. So obviously, we really want within this outcome to give every employee of Norwalk ACTS the unique resources that they need to access the opportunities to really build that overall goal of creating this more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce. So here are some of the recommendations of how we plan to implement a practice of equity within Norwalk ACTS's human resource process. And some of the example recommendations include engaging backbone staff, equity core team, the larger task force, and developing job descriptions, setting minimum requirements, reviewing resumes, conducting interviews, making hiring decisions that really develop and implement strategies of equity. Developing multidimensional recruitment, hiring, and retention strategies that support our BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, talent, and ensure that all hiring managers or within committee structures that they are also trained in strategies to mitigate implicit bias. So as mentioned, these are only a sampling of recommendations, but really wanting to ensure that there are kind of these internal processes that are taking place. And to talk about outcome 3, I will pass it over to Godfrey.
Good morning, everyone. Outcome 3 is the first of 2 outcomes focused on Norwalk ACTS external processes. As its overarching goal, outcome 3 relates to the expansion of the BIPOC community and their engagement as Norwalk ACTS members. As you can see from some of the recommendations, having a clear strategy for outreach to the BIPOC community is necessary, and their experience and their ideas be centered in this work. We also want to acknowledge that further trust needs to be established, and we look forward to building strong alliances to better share power. As highlighted during the May TPS workshop on community engagement, it's important that our communications and website truly reflects the multiculturalism of Norwalk, as well as giving the community clear, actionable ways to get involved within the work. Again, some of the examples listed here, you can see that one recommendation is the groundwork and deep dive on data that we have done to date show that a clear and surgical strategy targeting the BIPOC population for membership is necessary for Norwalk ACTS to undo the ills of systemic racism. We also acknowledge diversity and the intersectionality that exists within BIPOC communities. Another example highlighted here, earn community trust by demonstrating transparency about who makes what decisions at Norwalk ACTS and how community residents, those affected by the decisions made, can be part of the membership. Building alliance and share power with historically marginalized and minoritized residents. Develop the structures and processes to consistently center the experiences and ideas of BIPOC, LGBTQ, people with disabilities, and residents. Placing more emphasis on diversifying membership on the NACS website, create a membership video featuring a Norwalk resident, create a user-friendly membership portal for residents to join. Hosting resident membership drives and BIPOC communities and online through Zoom and other platforms. Invite community residents, create an inclusive platform for their participation, and share power and share how power decisions are made at Norwalk ACTS. I'm going to pass it on to our next presenter to touch on racial equity outcome 4.
Hi, good morning. As you can see up on the screen, these are some examples of how our racial equity outcome number 4, not final, but just number 4, will convene and support member organizations to advance the racial equity. These are examples of how our final long-term outcome will focus on the establishment of a continuous learning community for and with member organizations for resource development and engagement opportunities to advance racial equity. In partnership with member organizations, we do that because we recognize that within collective impact, it is more likely to solve complex problems working together than if a single nonprofit would approach the same problem on its own. And to that end, alignment between partners is critical among all stakeholders so that all are focused and committed to achieving a shared organization vision. Producing and providing research and information to support member organizations, that I believe is going to show up in our data, as Norwalk ACTS is a data-based organization. There is significant race equity work happening throughout the community with the work of Dr. Fergus and NPS, in addition to the work of the City of Norwalk and other grassroots organizations. We want to ensure that throughout Norwalk, we are able to align around common goals and develop a shared language, as was talked about earlier, and a roadmap to move equity forward as a community. And I believe I am going to pass it over to Naomi to wrap it up for us.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, everyone. One of the themes of today's conversation around our racial equity work has been journey and collective. Betsy, you said it really well. We were struggling as a race equity steering team because we didn't want to come today with a finished product. We were saying this is a work in progress. It's intentionally not buttoned up. We realize that there are individuals that are still missing from the conversation. We realize there are voices and feedback and opinions that we still need. So one of the things that's really important for us is that we made a smaller group so that we could go through this work and process and journey with Jamal in order for our race equity team to get us to this point. Our next plan and action steps are really to come back out to this larger community and to seek individuals that are willing to join us to continue this work. Sandy, it was great. It is community work. It does require a larger group. So that's our next step. That's what we're looking for. Individuals that are a part of the collective work that are willing to help us to be able to continue to work on that draft race equity statement and to help move these outcomes forward. So we thank you all for listening and participating with us today, but just wanted to let you all know that this is not the end of the work. One of the things that we did realize over the year is that we were intentional about going slow because we want to make sure that we're getting this right. We want to make sure that we are bringing in individuals that are missing from the conversation. And we want to ensure that we're doing the best that we can for not only Norwalk ACTS, for the entire city of Norwalk. So we thank you all, but please look out for more information on the Social Justice Task Force as we continue to move this work forward.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. I hope everyone takes the time, if you didn't and want to absorb more of the Race Equity Core Team statement that they developed, and go back into that survey, take it a letter time when you have some time to absorb and think about it, please do that. We'll make sure the link is circulated again a number of times before it closes out. But I want to just give a huge shout out to the Race Equity Core Team, to Danique, to Thought Partners Solutions. This team has met. We should count up the hours because the commitment that you all have made and the number of hours you have put in over the last year, we owe you a tremendous debt of gratitude for that. And it just shows your level of commitment to this work. So thank you very much. We are going to transition now over to, next slide, please. Melina, is our presentation by Dr. Estrella and the members of her cabinet. We are really excited. We know, actually, we probably don't know exactly what they are going through. We can only imagine, we can only guess what this has, the havoc that the pandemic and everything else has wreaked on the Norwalk Public Schools. They are a critical value trusted partner are so grateful for Dr. Estrella's wonderful leadership, and had the opportunity last week with our team to meet with some of the new cabinet members. And we will also be presenting tonight at the Board of Education, some of what you heard earlier this morning. But in the midst of a very busy reopening of schools, she and her cabinet members are joining us this morning for an hour to really walk through the strategic operating plan that they have developed and some of their key goals and priority areas. And we are very grateful for the time that they're spending with us. We are encouraging Norwalk ACTS members, as you listen through the presentation by Alex and her team, to really be thinking. We'll have a Q&A afterwards, so be thinking about the role Norwalk ACTS and the larger Norwalk ACTS, which includes Norwalk Public Schools, can play in really helping support the district in these key priority areas, and with a lens too into those cornerstones that we talked about. So that, you know, the data, the race equity, the community engagement, and the policy work. So I am going to turn it over now to Dr. Estrella, and she can introduce her team and take us through a presentation.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Good, thank you.
I hope everyone is well. We're just going to share a PowerPoint with you.
Yes.
Can you provide Ralph access to share, please?
Ralph, I made you a co-host. Do you have?
I do now. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Give me a moment, please. Can you show a presentation?
No.
Ralph, we can see your presentation.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. So thank you for having me here today, Jennifer, and the rest of the Norwalk ACTS team. It gives us an opportunity to present the work that took over approximately a year to engage in, because of the fact that we involve so many different constituents within the community. And we formulated a task force that comprised of educators within the organization and other partners throughout the city of Norwalk to help us kind of think through some of the findings of different studies that we engaged in order for us to be able to identify the areas of focus for this new strategic plan. So for those of you who are familiar, we engaged in an equity study. We had facility studies conducted. We had, prior to my arrival, a study that was conducted by the former superintendent in assessing and analyzing what the current state of the district based on the work that had been done with the previous strategic operating plans. And there were a number of other studies that helped inform what helped us develop the strategic plan that we have here today. From all of these conversations, we were able to realign our mission and vision, as well as set up priorities for the work moving forward. So I'd like to introduce you to our new mission, which is Norwalk Public Schools provides an excellent and equitable education so all students graduate future ready as civically responsible, globally engaged and positive contributors to an ever-changing and diverse world. One of our big focuses as we engage in the work is that when we talk about all, we mean all. And in everything that we are immersing ourselves in, we want to ensure that as we look at this proportionality across the district and also systematic challenges that have led to systematic either racism or unexpected outcomes, that we are reassessing and reanalyzing ourselves as an organization to ensure that when we're talking about our children and we're saying that we're here to service all our children, that we mean what we say. Our vision for our work moving forward is Norwalk Public Schools is building a more equitable and just world where each and every Norwalk student is prepared for all aspects of life. We had the opportunity not only to engage adults within the community in this process, but we also had our students immersed in conversations about what do they first saw as our organization's mission and vision, and they had a lot to say in terms of what it should be. And this final product is a reflection not only of the work that the community did as a collective, but also the voices of our students. And the focus around building equitable process around the organization, but most importantly, to prepare our students, not just for college and career, but all aspects of life and their path forward. Through the conversations, we spoke about a set of values that we as an organization want to live by. And this slide kind of represents the overarching values that we as an organization thrive and will continue to work towards building and uplifting the work around. Some of which include equity, student potential, excellence, relationships, integrity, our people. When we talk about our people, is really having a finite focus, not only on what we want for our students, but those who support our students and making sure that their needs are met so that they can effectively support our children. And never forgetting that our schools need to be filled with creativity and innovation so that we can effectively prepare the children of tomorrow. And as we immerse ourselves in the work, always thinking about the process of continuous improvement, the work never ends. We're always learning, growing, and further developing what we're doing so that we can become better at what we do. But while we're doing that, we're also informed of the best practices and work that is being done in the workplace and in other fields that will inform the work that we do in schools. From our values, we also then further articulated 5 strategic priorities that will umbrella the work that we do for the course of the next 3 to 5 years, with a focus on reassessing and reanalyzing our focus on a yearly basis. And those 5 priority areas, first and foremost, the first one is future readiness, having a finite focus on preparing our students for different career paths, workplace opportunities, as well as developing the ability to become global leaders. We are becoming a smaller and smaller world the more that we interconnect ourselves with each other, either through different modalities of technology and communication tools. As you know, the pandemic, despite its challenges, taught us a lot of what is possible in cases when you're not in the same room. So we want to take advantage of every opportunity that this experience has brought forward and many other experiences to really think about the opportunities we within schools provide our students to prepare them for the workplace and beyond. In thinking about the work around equity is in ensuring that not only are we focused on providing strong instructional practices to well equip our students in all of our classrooms, but also thinking about our facility and infrastructure and how the places our students come into are resembling what we want them to be, and most importantly, that they don't look different from one community to another. Because our equity also has a lot to do with how different infrastructures are equipped and set up for the success of our students. And we want to make sure that students in all communities are being well served. And the third is excellence. We want to make sure that in everything we do, we're starting to develop systematic change that always yields excellence for our students, and that we're creating learning models that resemble the future ahead. But most importantly, that we're focused on the aspect that I mentioned earlier of continuous improvement to ensure success. And as we do that, we want to make sure we do that in partnership with our community and families. That's why engagement is our 4th strategic priority, because as we immerse in our work, we have to do this in partnership with our children, families, and other collaborative partners so that as we're doing this work, we're putting them at the forefront of what we're doing, but we're also making sure that they're engaged and involved in the process. And finally, and just as important, is high quality instruction and support. The work cannot be done well if our work does not circle around ensuring that what happens in the classroom is of highest caliber. And a lot of the work that particularly this year we'll be focusing on is building the capacity of our leaders and transforming them into instructional leaders that will effectively support our teachers and other personnel to enhance what's happening in the classroom. Now, we set up a set of goals aligned to the strategic priorities from the strategic plan. And I'm going to allow the different members of the team to speak to the different goals that we have set forward for this year in alignment to the strategic plan. And we're looking forward in partnership with many of you in Norwalk ACTS that we can fulfill these goals for the betterment of our children. So I'll turn it over now to Rob that will speak to goal 1.
Good morning, everyone. Rob Pennington, Assistant Superintendent of Schools. Goal 1 is that MTS will individualize student success plans. And the roadmap to success is really around redesigning our K-12 curriculum maps to fully integrate all learners, to incorporate healthy social emotional boundary practices, and achieve consistent implementation across schools and grades through a district-wide assessment system. So we've redesigned our curriculum maps. We started, and that's part of our goal this year is to integrate these in all of our schools. We are implementing a new K-5 reading curricula, and we're developing teacher professional capacity to teach reading, and that's the foundations of reading. We've started with a cohort of teachers already, and we will continue throughout the entire year. We have hired an educational administrator in charge of SRBI, so we are going to redefine and refine our SRBI processes and enhance our gifted and talented programs. We're going to launch a 3-year roadmap that responds to last year's audit of services for students with disabilities. We are going to develop and refine diversified programs that motivate students through specialized theme-based curricula in areas such as the arts, language, STEM, IB, coding and web development, health, marine sciences, and media. And we are also going to develop holistic educational processes that cultivate and develop our students' academic, physical, emotional, moral, and psychological attributes. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Sandra Fayolis, Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations.
Thank you, Rob, so much. And hello, good morning, everybody. I'm going to take you through goal 2, which focuses on the department that I currently run, which is the Business and Operations Department. And in consultation with finance, we have developed a goal to have a 3 to 5 year facilities plan, including building-based facilities plans. And the important thing about this work for this year is that we want to match that with a scoreboard so that we can actually be progress monitoring while we are implementing this plan. So the strategies are to actually come up with a 3 to 5 year facilities plan, and then have annual facilities plans that are building based, and have a scoreboard that also matches walkthrough protocols so that we could be visiting schools, and align this with our capital plan. And the importance is to make sure that this work, as it's being implemented, is actually being assessed, and that we are communicating to our community the goal and how it is that we are meeting those metrics. And now I'm going to pass it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Thomas Hamilton, and he's going to take you through goal 3.
Hey, thank you, Sandra. Good to be with everyone this morning. So goal 3 is to streamline and improve the operational efficiency and effectiveness of the district's human resources, finance, and business and operations departments. And the way we're going to do that really is by creating cross-functional teams that are analyzing, reviewing, and updating our business processes and practices. We're seeking to employ best practices to make our work processes simpler and more effective and more efficient. Moreover, we're seeking to make sure that we work with our respective departments is coherent and in alignment. We know that high-performing and equitable schools require strong support services from HR, finance, and the business operations teams so that our schools can maintain their focus on where it belongs, our students' academic and social and emotional well-being. And now I'm going to turn it back to Rob Pennington to talk about Goal 4.
So Goal 4 is MPS will cultivate instructional leadership in all school buildings. And the way that we are attacking this, our roadmap to success, is to cultivate school leadership in all school buildings through professional learning for school leaders and teacher leaders. We're actually at a principal training today. We're going to have frequent progress monitoring around cycles of support, where we'll be going into schools to provide support to our leaders. Principals are creating school improvement plans for each of their buildings, and we will be supporting them through that process. We also will have teacher teams and equity teams at each of our buildings that will be supporting our instructional practices, and then we'll have a data dashboard to support them in their work. Now I'm going to turn it over to Goal 5, which is Ralph Valenzizi, Assistant Superintendent of Digital Learning.
Good morning, everybody. The goal 5, if we take a look at one of our strategies that we really want to develop, and we're trying to develop more equity within our districts, is we want to make sure that we offer opportunities for all of our learners. In order to do so, we really need to offer diversified and innovative programs for our learners. So in the upcoming school year, we're going to be focusing on a variety of programs, but these in particular are ones that we're going to have a strong focus on developing together. One is going to be one that you heard about a little bit over the summer, which is developing a virtual academy to open in September of 2022 for our 11th and 12th graders. A second program that will be expanding is our bilingual and dual language programs. Currently, we have them at West Rocks and also at Silvermine, and we'll be expanding those programs and be trying to create a stronger connection between the elementary to the middle school programs. As we build this out, Jefferson will be included in that model. We will be refining our Twilight Academy. And if you're not familiar with our Twilight Academy, it was an after-school program that we actually developed for students that just needed a different learning environment. And it was very, very successful throughout the pandemic. So we've planned to implement that now on a full-time basis for our students and develop the program. We are, if you're familiar with our program, our K program, the Bonus STEAM Academy, we'll continue to develop that pathway into our high schools. And then finally, we are also going to be focused on our arts pathway, which will begin at Wolf Pit Elementary School. There'll be a house at Nathan Hale that'll be focused on the arts, and that'll flow into our Norwalk High arts program. So we're really excited to make sure that all of those programs are in place for this coming school year in September 2022 and expand them as much as possible. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Goal 6, which I'll turn this over to Brenda Williams, our Chief of Staff, to talk a little bit about Goal 6.
Good morning, Norwalk. I'm Brenda Wilcox-Williams, and the Chief of Staff and Communications for the school district. And I am so excited about Goal 6, and I think many of you will be as well. Quite simply, we want to make sure that our families are provided with equitable opportunities to access programs and resources across the district. And there's a number of ways that we're going to do this under the strategic plan in the coming years, but especially in year 1. So Ralph, if you can move to the next slide. So first and foremost, and many of you will have heard about this already because we've been discussing it publicly for several months. The district will be establishing an NPS family center that will serve as a central hub for parents and guardians. One of the things that we've realized in the work that has been done over the past year in development of the strategic plan is that a lot of the information that's out there about our programs and our services doesn't always reach into every corner of our community. And that's something that we want to fix so that we're giving excellent customer service to everybody from the minute that they walk into the district till the time that they finally graduate with a successful senior student heading on to either college or career. We know that the way that we're set up right now here in central office and out at our schools makes it a confusing maze for parents to navigate, whether it's coming into the school district as a new kindergarten parent, whether you are a newcomer to Norwalk, you have to start in the school, or you start here in our MLL Welcome Center. You have to go somewhere else to drop off a health form. And it really, we're just not able to be set up well in our current situation to make it easy for parents to access services, resources, registration, you name it, information about the many programs and pathways that we have that some of my colleagues talked about earlier today. So the Family Center will be centrally located and using existing staff that are currently doing this work in various locations in the district. We will basically take those existing resources and consolidate them in one place, cross-train people so that we have more than one person who's a subject matter expert, and also take it away, not take it away, but make sure that our school secretaries who have many other things on their plate aren't the experts in registration or residency or meal plans or bus transportation, but we have the experts in one place. So we hope to have more firm plans to announce about that in the coming weeks. But I'm looking forward to working with everybody as well, because it will also serve as a hub out to community organizations as well. Once we have the school district resources set up, there'll also be opportunities to reach out to our community organizations as well, because we want to make sure we've got those connections in the community so that we can refer people out to the excellent work and the excellent opportunities and services and programs that you all have as well. So a lot more to come about that. I talked a little bit about the central registration process as part of the Family Center. That's something that we're working on with our technology folks. And something that will streamline registration. As part of that, I'll jump down to the fourth bullet point. We'll also be putting together a deep level of marketing communications materials that will talk about our choice options and highlight the key features of all our schools. And that will feed into the central registration process and what will be central lotteries for our magnet programs as well. Again, so that we've got them centralized in one spot and it's easier for people to access in any language. And then we'll also be planning and executing a series of family workshops under the Family Center umbrella this year, again, just to make sure that we're engaging families early and often and providing them with the resources that they need to help their students be successful. And with that, I think I'm turning it back to the superintendent.
Thank you. So, thank you, MPS team. That concludes the goals that we have set this year in terms of the work we're hoping to accomplish for this academic school year. I also want to take an opportunity to introduce a new member to our team who will be leading the excellence, equity, and inclusion work for the district, Dr. Thomas McBride. Our new deputy superintendent, and I would like for him to just say a few words so that the group can get to know him a little bit better and put a face to a name as we move forward in the work.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is well. Again, I'm excited to be and inclusion. I'm really excited about this work because oftentimes when you are dealing with various organizations, the work around equity just lives in one department, and the focus specifically around race or about implicit bias. But Dr. Estrella was very thoughtful and strategic in her design of ensuring that equity lives across all spectrums of the work in Norwalk Public Schools, in that we are ensuring that equity and inclusion is evident and prevalent within the curriculum work, within social emotional learning, within the budgetary focus, within even school structures. So I'll be working along a variety of individuals who've already done some great work before I came to really deepen and drive the work to ensure that all of our scholars have access to a high quality, excellent education, as well as are provided the supports to feel valued, as well as seen in developing the great leaders that they will become. So I'm excited about moving forward with this.
And with that, it concludes our presentation. We're open to any questions that the group might have about the strategic plan.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We are going to open it up. I know members have been hearing and absorbing a lot of information this morning, and you've been all great to be so patient. And now will be your opportunity to jump in and ask some questions. I'm just going to review a few norms, and we'll monitor the chat and open it up for questions in a moment. But just a reminder, acknowledge the time you're taking and leave space and room for other questions. Check your assumptions. We want to assume positive intent and be purposeful and to the point. And you all know we've done breakout groups and large scale Q&A before. So please enter questions in the chat, and I will moderate that. If you're unable to type, raise your hand using the little thing in Zoom, and we will get to you as well. So Emily, I think you can pull down the slides for a moment so we can see each other. And I think it goes without saying, Dr. McBride, from the chat, that you are a most welcome addition to the Norwalk community, and we are very eager to partner with you and continue to partner with the rest of the cabinet we're very familiar with. So let's see. Okay, I have a question from Michael Crafter. How do the SGCs fit into the strategic plans and goals?
So I'll have Brenda respond to that because that's part of her portfolio of work.
Sure, and thanks for that question. That's a great question. The SGCs fit into all of our strategic plans and goals. They are valuable contributors to each of our school communities. And we continue to see them having a role in partnership with everything that we're rolling out here. We are working with our principals right now to finalize SGCs for the upcoming year, and that includes some of the elections that are scheduled to take place in September. We're going to be revamping some of the work that we do in terms of our SGC training throughout the year to make sure that we are enabling everybody to advise our principals, on matters throughout the schools. And it will continue to be a valuable partnership advising our school district. So hopefully that helps.
Great. We have another question from Erica Hernandez. Regarding engagement, how can Norwalk ACTS partner with Norwalk Public Schools engagement goals with family involvement? Do you have a date where the family center opens?
I think that's me as well. We hope to have more information very shortly on that. We hope to have information about a lease very shortly, and as soon as we have that, we will let you folks know. In the meantime, we will be launching programs over the course of the year under the auspices of the Family Center, whether that's the parent workshops, the central registration, and the other work. So as soon as we have additional news and information, I will let you know through Norwalk ACTS so that we can share it with everybody on this call, and then we can take the next steps moving forward to let you know more information about it.
And I see one from Mimi, who is with Horizons. Dr. McBride, welcome. Part of our race equity work is outcome 4, which highlights working with NPS and the city of Norwalk as a recommendation. Do you foresee Norwalk ACTS and your work aligning for a community-wide approach to equity and inclusion for Norwalk children and youth?
Absolutely. We're not separate and apart. We are the community. So it's only right that we collaborate in various opportunities to share information and create a collaborative plan of action of support around this great work. So absolutely.
Terrific. And I think the Race Equity Core team would love to, I think, talked about inviting you. We know you're still getting your feet under you, but into an upcoming meeting to talk about that a little bit more. And if anyone has, it's hard for me to see with 80 people. If there are follow-up, please speak up or put in the chat. We have another one from Doreen Anderson, parent community member. Oh, I'm sorry, I got Marissa Mangone, also a parent in the district. Is a parent survey at the beginning of this year, mental health and social emotional wellness was a top priority. Anything specific you are doing to support both families and staff?
So Rob Honey, in terms of SEL supports, we have SEL at all of our schools. Each school has created a social emotional learning plan for this year. We've expanded advisory in our middle and high schools to support our students. And we are looking to also support families as well. So each school has created their own social emotional learning plan. We are also expanding some of our programs, and we're looking to support families and our educators as well.
Great. And now Doreen's question. Thank you, Dr. Estrella and the team, as well as Norwalk ACTS. My question relates to intermediate concerns of student mental health. Will NPS be using the data from the SEL survey to provide support for students, and what will these supports look like?
It's aligned with what I just spoke about in terms of those SEL supports at the schools. We are using the survey to make determinations. We have our counselors, we have our health providers, we have at all of our schools that are also supporting in this work.
Great. And for those who aren't involved in our social emotional wellness or social emotional learning / wellness initiative, we are working the greater we in this mental health and student support world, working very closely with Jim Martinez on how we can align between all of these. So many of the people on this call provide such wonderful services in the community and supports for students, as well as lots of conversations happening with Lamont Daniels and Maria Escalera and the city and the structure they've created. And this also ties in, of course, with the Welcome Center, the Family Center, and how we can make sure there's a seamless kind of point of entry for families to get their needs met. So just a reminder, if anyone's particularly interested in the SEL or SCW work, to make sure we know that so you're on our mailing list. Okay, there was a question about, are the SE plans public documents?
Not at this time. The principals are going through their goal setting review with their direct point of support. When those are finalized, the school improvement plans will be public documents that will encompass the SEL information as well.
Thank you. Okay. Dewan, and just a shout out to Dewan. A couple of us, I think, on here were at his event on Sunday at the Norwalk Inn. He did a Shark Tank type event with the students in his cohort. They knocked it out of the park. They were amazing, and just was an extraordinary afternoon. I know Jasmine was there, a couple others. So kudos to you, Dewan, and all the work you're doing with the young people in Norwalk. So he asks, I'm excited to be here. I would like to know how we can do a better job connecting the schools with these organizations on the call. And if you want to jump in, Dewan, you're welcome to flesh that out.
Yeah, so I've been talking to a couple of people actually on this call and just thinking about like I feel like the schools are kind of like a secret society. So how can we really get these organizations involved with the schools directly, right? And the reason why I say this, right? Schools started, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, but school started a couple weeks ago, right? And our students we're really like in sync with one another, and we talk about a lot of things. And I've seen, so they've been sharing videos of like people in the schools fighting, right? And it saddens me for a couple reasons. One, it shouldn't just be happening. Two, it's happening in the classes, it's happening in the hallways, and it's like 2 weeks in. So it's like, what's really going on? I gotta move because this AC is on, it's loud. What's really going on within our schools, and how can these organizations better, assist, just the schools, right? Like, how can we get in, or how can we really navigate through our school system? So it really bothered me, and I'm really passionate about helping and really like getting to the root causes. We talk about social emotional learning. It's like, what's really going on, and why aren't we knowing about this, and why do we have to find out the ways that we do? So.
And I would say that dovetails maybe with a question someone side messaged me about the restorative practices work that has gone on in some pockets of the community, but so I'll just tag team on that because it's related.
So I think in terms of your question, there have been some conflicts. Obviously, you wouldn't know, the broader audience wouldn't know about this because student privacy is, we have to maintain confidentially. And we have had restorative conversations with the students involved. I just have to preface that these are isolated, pocketed situations and don't happen frequently, because I don't want the audience here to have the misconception that this is happening on a continuous basis. And we have been working with the students that have engaged in unproductive behavior and worked with them in finding better ways of engaging in conflict resolution through restorative practices, which is something that we continue to build. And Dr. McBride will continue to lead in his work to effectively support educators throughout the organization at large in how to support students through advisory, which is now a common practice across our organization, in supporting our students in emotional management, as well as how to engage in productive conversations when there are disputes or disagreements about topics or different concerns. So we are aware that as a result of COVID, there's a lot of tension that has arisen. There's a lot of excitement as well. There's a lot of enthusiasm in our buildings because our students are back in person and they're reacclimating to what I would call the new environment that they haven't been part of for over a year. Even in our younger elementary school students, that started kindergarten, didn't experience kindergarten, and now are in first, second grade, experiencing school for the first time in what we call the new normal now. And that takes time for them to acclimate and adjust, because things that they would have learned in kindergarten, now we have to take the time to engage them in the process in second grade, while there's a lot of learning that comes with second grade as well. So just to preface, we are embedding practices, and we will continue to develop them to fully support our students throughout the year.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. But I definitely still want to kind of like think of ways that, some of our organizations can be more hands-on, because, when you think about a school, I don't know how many people attend these schools, but, some students could fall through the cracks, right? Because of the lifestyles, because of their home issues. I just think because there's so many organizations and so many things that we do, like, how can we think about catching those kids that fall through the crack, that might not be engaging with you guys and so on and so forth.
No, I appreciate that, and I agree.
Jennifer, you're muted. I'll hop in for a moment. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary Kate's question. Norwalk has a strong early childhood community of wonderful partners that support our children and families with a focus on kindergarten readiness. Can you speak to your vision for how we can continue to strengthen the bridge between early childhood and K-12?
So Amaris Melendez, who is our early childhood point person at the district level, and I have had extensive conversations about bridging the gap, because one of the things that we've noticed, like, first and foremost, is how we are assessing students when they come into kindergarten in terms of kindergarten and school readiness versus how it's being done in some of the early childhood centers. And one of the things that we're hoping to do is immerse ourselves in conversations about what readiness means and developing a common definition of what that is. Because some of the gaps that we're noticing across our system are in part associated because we are defining what school readiness is differently. And we have to develop a common language around the definition of what that is, so that one, we can backwards plan to the early years in terms of what development looks like within that. And then we know what to expect in kindergarten and beyond for those students who have been in programs that allow for school readiness to happen, and how do we take advantage of that to further extend their learning experiences. I think first and foremost is also, as an organization, looking at the research and what is developmentally appropriate for students at the different stages, particularly as they enter kindergarten, and what does that work look like. In my previous work, we had programs as early as 3K, which was 3 years old and up. And we had a really fine focus on building systematic thinking around what is it that we want our 3-year-olds to know, but what is developmentally appropriate, and how are those learning experiences building for what we want them to be ready for in kindergarten. And really using that as kind of a platform in the conversation to really further develop what we're doing. And I'm hoping we can do the same in Norwalk, because I think we have a really robust structure around programs that offer school readiness and early childhood development opportunities that we can potentially further enhance together. And by first and foremost, developing a common definition of what we mean by school readiness. I don't know if I answered the question, but I hope that.
Thank you. The next question is, please describe your vision for how individual student success plans will be changing going forward. And that's from Charlie Allred, who's one of our board members.
So as a team, we're still working to finalize what that will mean in the work that we do. That is part of year one's work, is really thinking about what does the portfolio of a Norwalk Public School student look like, and as a result, how are we arranging our pathways to develop and provide the opportunities for students to align to that portfolio. So there will be more information to come on that topic, because part of the work this year is to really define what that is based on what we have. Also think about the realignment of programs and pathways in the organization to ensure that they reflect what we are hoping students are able to acquire from our organization at large to prepare them for the work ahead.
Dr. Strait, if I can add something to that. one of the things we're doing with all of this work too, that is also tied into all of our strategies, is the idea of how we in this coming year. And we will be actually developing a research and evaluation department to be able to help support questions of like looking at how our kids are on track. What are we using as measures for them on track, whether from pre-K all the way through grade 12, and making sure that they're college and career ready. So that is another large initiative, but it's embedded within everything that we do.
So thanks for everyone's patience. I have been having enormous Zoom challenges all meeting, popping in and out and being stuck and not able to do anything. So I apologize. I don't even want to try to look at the chat because every time I do, something happens. So Jesse, can you tell me if there are any other questions in the chat?
Sure. I just want to acknowledge Doreen's comment and suggestion, but we'll kind of switch over to Nancy Von Euler's question, who's one of our board members, but also the executive director of Horizons. What actions will NBS take to ensure that you are recruiting staff that is representative of the student population?
So one of the things that we did alongside redesigning and building the new strategic plan was conducting an HR audit and realigning that department to really focus on the work that we foresee ahead. And part of that work was around recruitment and engagement of diverse educators across the organization. And within the first year of setting up, I think first and foremost, a clear focus on making sure that diversity matters and diversity makes for a better organization, and not pivoting from the mindset that creating a more diverse workforce creates a diluted sense of rigor or expectation, was at the forefront of a lot of the conversations that we've had. We've set up a lot of fairs, and we will continue to, with an emphasis in ensuring that we individuals that are representative of the students that we are in service of, and we will continue to do that. We also have a very diverse paraeducator community, and one of the things that we're looking at is potentially supporting their higher education so that we can offer them the opportunity to become our teachers of tomorrow. Because if you look at the way the organization is set, our highest diversity, diverse populations are within the paraeducator realm, which have the possibility and already have a lot of the training because they're in the classrooms with our educators to potentially fulfill a full degree in teaching that will allow them to then become a future educators, and will further allow us to diversify our applicant pool and our demographics amongst those that are supporting students in the classroom.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions in the chat. We do have time for probably 1 to 2 more questions. If anybody, I haven't seen anybody raising their hand, but if anybody's unable to chat their question and wants to ask it through this, just raise your hand or you can speak up.
Are we good? I think we're good. I can't see the chat, so assuming that, oh, something snuck in under the conversation, under the wire. Was one just popped in?
Yeah, so from Greg Burnett from Common Council, can you further define the term future ready? What does future ready success look like?
So future ready success is defined in many different ways depending on a child's pathway and what they see themselves engaging in. At the core of it is allowing students to be able to say, I'm doing this because this is what I want to do, not because I have no alternative but to go in this path because I was not well equipped or prepared to do what I wanted to do. So in some cases, it would be a college path. In other cases, it will be our high school to workforce path and opportunity. In other cases, it will be engaging in tasks that allow them to learn work skills. Like we have a 18 to 21 success program now at One Park Place those students are learning how to, first of all, they're learning life skills, and in those life skills, teaching them how to immerse themselves into the workforce and have successful, independent lives. So for every child, what success and future ready looks like is different depending on what their aspirations, wants are, and what their individualized needs and plans will be. That's why when we look at the portfolio of an MPS graduate, we have to be very careful in how we define it, so we don't pigeonhole all of our students to look in one way, because we have a very diverse community of learners, and we want to move away from assuming success means a college degree, because success for students means very, very different things. And it's solely based on what their aspirations are and who they want to be in the world. And that will look very different for every single child in the organization. And our responsibility is to ensure that we provide as many pathways, programs, and options to expose and allow them the opportunity to build their capacity to be able to do what they dream of, not what they wound up deciding to do because they had no other choice. We have a responsibility to equip them with what they need so that they can fulfill their dreams. And that is our goal.
Terrific. Are we good, Jesse?
I don't see any other questions in the chat.
Great. Thank you so much to Dr. Estrella and the cabinet. We are so grateful for your time. As you can see, there is a lot of interest in partnership and supporting your goals and seeing how the larger, broader community can get behind you and align. So we look forward to future conversations. We know you have a long day ahead of you, and we'll see many of you tonight at the Board of Education meeting. And so if you need to pop off now, we understand as we wrap up the last 10 or so minutes with members and close out our meeting. So many thanks to you all.
Thank you.
Ana Melina, if you could pull up the slides. And the next one. Oh, I'm sorry, Paula, did you want to do a minute on data? No, we're good. Okay. So we're going to put in the chat the usual. All right, back to this one. So a few of the upcoming meetings, just to highlight for you as a reminder, we are entering year 2 of our partnership with the Center for Youth Leadership on hosting youth town halls. They have been extraordinary. I highly recommend you join and listen in. Adults are always welcome to listen in as the youth lead these important conversations. They have been extremely enlightening. I will say the LGBTQ+ one they did in February, March of last year taught me so much, as well as some of the other conversations on race equity and others. These are extraordinary young people. We should be really excited about having them in our community. So the next one on September 22nd is about vaccinations in the kind of 12 to 18 population. And then you'll see two over from that. They are hosting, and at the moment, the only Board of Education candidate forum yet scheduled. So we have been in touch with the League of Women Voters and the representatives from the 2 parties that are putting up candidates and have put the candidates on notice for this forum October 27th. And the students are working with their civics classes and within the CYL to develop some really robust questions. They ask harder questions than the adults do. So I encourage you to come and listen in on October 27th. And of course, we'll send out more information in the coming weeks on that. Some of you remember that the Backbone team and a few community members, many community members actually, were supposed to be in San Antonio the first week of October for the Strive Together National Convening. I'm disappointed that, of course, that has gone virtual due to the pandemic. So the good news is that it is open to all of you virtually. There was always going to be a smaller virtual component, but the whole thing will be virtual now. Information went out in our newsletter that was sent out the other day, and a shout out to our marketing consultant, Emily, for a terrific revamp of our newsletter. We hope you all found that really informative and helpful. So if you're interested, please go back to that newsletter and take a look at how you can register. If cost is an issue, and we do have 10 scholarships, it's $25 to register for the week-long virtual convening, and you can pop in and out and decide on workshops that you want to attend. But we have 10 scholarships set aside for any community parent, member, youth that want to participate. So if you're among that group, you can email info@norwalkacts.org to get some more information. Our next time that we're together as a full group will be in December 14th at the next convening, where we will spotlight policy and advocacy work. All of these, of course, will be reminded in newsletters and social media coming up in the coming weeks. Next slide. So as we implemented a year or so ago, the Plus Delta form for this particular convening, it's always very helpful for us to get your feedback on what's working, what's not for these convenings, and what was helpful for you today, what you'd like to see more of. We had talked about breakout groups, which we know give people more opportunity to converse, but felt that for the NPS presentation, it was better to do in a full group kind of Q&A. Again, just another shout out about that newsletter, which is terrific. If you're not a member, please sign our MOA. We are in the process, as Jesse indicated earlier in the meeting, of revamping and really embedding our cornerstones and what that really means to be a member and to be adhering to kind of the cornerstones, as well as our new mission and vision. So we are tweaking it, but we're always, of course, adding new members at any time. So if you're not, please go back and take a look and join us. And Jesse just added the Plus Delta in the chat. So unless there's anything else from the Backbone team that I missed, we will end a few minutes early, which I'm sure nobody will be upset by. I also just want to remind folks to pay attention in the newsletters too to opportunities in the community that are happening. We know, for instance, our friends at the arts space, the new art space, if you haven't been there, which is extraordinary, is trying to populate their free programming, their free arts programming for high school age students. And so they're really struggling to get those free classes filled with just extraordinary artists and opportunities. So I know there's many of you who have programming opportunities and openings. And so if you have those that you want us to push out on social media and our newsletters, please let us know that. Backbone team, are we good? Anything else? We're good? All right, well, enjoy the beautiful fall weather. Thank you to all of you for everything you do, and we look forward to seeing you in initiative meetings in the coming weeks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Dawn.